All right, so we're going to have a look at these compound column graphs. So I personally like to think of these compound or stacked column graphs as like rectangular pie graphs and it's really blatant in this case because the scale happens to be in a percentage. Sometimes the scale will be in whole numbers, but the total height of the column equals 100% of whatever the feature you are measuring. And we can see that the 100% column height is made up of different sectors. So it works in the same way as a pie graph. What might happen in some different types is that the columns might not all be the same height, but that just means that there is different counts that are occurring. So it wouldn't be measured in percentage, it would be measured in whole numbers. So what we're going to do is have a look at this particular one with some sample exam style questions. And if it's looking a little bit confusing now, once we go through the questions, I have no doubt it'll look a little bit more exciting for you. So just to have a look at the graph first, we're looking at the use of water in selected world regions. We've got the percentage within that region, and the key tells us what each sector means. And then along the horizontal axis, we've got the whole world and then the 4 different regions. So question 1, which 2 uses represent around 80% of North America's water use? So this is a pretty detailed question because it's got a lot of information, but it does help us because it directs us and focuses us on what to look at in this fairly complex graph. So we're looking for North America. So we're going to find that first of all, and that means we can basically ignore all the other regions. So if I just by looking at the North America column, we want to look at the 2 uses. So these are the uses here. So I need to find 2 out of the 3, which represent around. That means it's not going to be exactly 80% of North America's water use. So if I have a look at North America, I'm going to look for the totals for each of the 3 categories. So if I look for household, that to me, so that's a dark color. If I start measuring down from 100, so it's 100, looks almost towards 80. So I'd probably say it's about 18% of their water use is used by households. Industry, now this one's a tricky one because it's in the middle, but if I've got 2 there, so it goes from 80 down to 40 plus maybe another 1 or 2. So that's a good 20, 40 to, I'll say 44%. And then agriculture, I probably should have started measuring from the bottom up. That would have made more sense. But if I measure from 0 just to below 40, I don't know, I'm just sort of guessing it here. My statistics might be a bit out at the end. So just below 40, so I'll go 38%. Now, theoretically, these 3 numbers will add up to 100%, like I mentioned before. So what I want to figure out is which 2 would add up to a number that's very close to 80%. Now, straight away, I can see that using household with either of these 2 other ones probably won't work. So my answer is going to be industrial and agriculture. Because if I add those 2 numbers together, 44 and 38, 2, carry the 1, 4, 4. So that should give me 82%. So that's not bad. That is very close or around 80%. So that's going to be my most correct answer. Question 2. Which 2 regions had similar percentage use of household water? So I'm looking for 2 regions and I'm looking for their similar use of household water. So let's have a look. We've got the world data, the Middle East and North Africa, North America, South America, and Sub-Saharan Africa. So if I just go through this first part, 2 regions, I'm actually going to ignore one of these columns altogether straight away. The one that I'm going to ignore is the first one, because I'm asked to look for a region of the world, not the whole world itself. So I'm going to ignore that first column. So I'm down to looking at 4 regions, and I need to pick 2 of the 4 which had similar, not exactly the same, but very close to the same percentage use of household water. So household was the darker category. So I've got to find which of these 4 have very similar levels of household water use. So I can see in the Middle East and North Africa, it's quite small, it's only about 5%. So I might just note that down. Middle East and North Africa, I've said it's about 5%. We've said for North America, it's just under 20%. So I think we said up here it was 18. So North America, we said 18%. So they're not very similar at all. For South America, it looks like it's about 20%. And then for Sub-Saharan Africa, we're looking at about, I'd say 15%. Now, this is slightly debatable. Look how close these 3 numbers are. But if I'm looking for the ones which are most similar, I'm going to go for these 2, North and South America. That's what my answer would be for that question. Sub-Saharan Africa does look pretty close to North America, but I think these 2 are slightly closer together. The last question is multiple choice, so we've just got to pick the best option. Which statement best reflects the data? Not is accurate, but it best reflects the pattern we see in the data. So, which of these 2 is most correct? A, developing regions, and we need a bit of prior knowledge for that. A developing region we might think of as a country where there is maybe not as strong as an economy, so not very wealthy at times. In certain places, maybe these people are struggling through issues like access to healthcare. So developing regions use more water of their total use, this is not worded very well, I apologise, on agriculture. So developing regions use more water on agriculture. So of these 4 regions, which ones would we consider developing? Well, probably Sub-Saharan Africa. South America, we would also probably consider that because we're looking at this idea of being not a developed nation. And some of the countries in these regions are not very well off. And Middle East and North Africa, we'd probably categorise them as well. So these 3 columns, do they have a high percentage use for agriculture? We've got the shaded column, the lightest shaded column is high on all 3. So I would suggest that sounds like a pretty correct statement. But before I lock that in as my answer, let's have a look at the second statement. Developed countries, these are the wealthier economies where people live longer lives, have higher rates of education as well. Things like that, it's not always the case. But that's what I'd consider a developed country or developed region, use more water for their total use on agriculture. So the one that we specified wasn't developing was probably North America. So does it use most of its water for agriculture, which was the lightest shade? Well, it's actually the smallest out of all. So I would say that that's probably not true. So I've just confirmed my suspicion that this is the most correct statement that best reflects the data that's been presented here. And that's it.